My name's Jon. I'm the Chief Branding Officer of Omnitude. Omnitude started here in Worthing about 14 months ago with 4 of us in a very small room, and a very crazy idea around this new technology. I won't bore you too much, but we raised enough funds to allow us to develop a platform, a blockchain platform for enterprise. We've talked about how blockchain aids the monetary or financial transactions. Kingsley did a great job of explaining that. Our view of blockchain has started there, but it has moved on slightly. And if you were to abstract this idea of moving financial records and think of, as Kingsley alluded to, as distributed ledgers being a very good way of securing the transaction of value rather than just money, it starts to take on a slightly different shape for larger global enterprises. So in this very natty, branded way, I've tried to sum that, what Omnitude is, up into a couple of lines. So next digital revolution, clarity in a complex world. Now it sounds great, looks great on the screen, but what does it mean? Let's find out, shall we? So we talked about this idea of being able to cut out the middleman. So another very glib comment here. So in the kingdom of the blind, the one-eyed middleman is king. Think about how many middlemen are involved in everyone's everyday lives and every business's everyday life. Our digital revolution that we have seen happen, and this marvellous internet that spans the globe, has given us one thing, and that is an awful lot of these people. If you want to buy anything nowadays online, you end up most of the time going through a middleman. So think about Amazon, think about your banks, think about shipping organisations, think about resellers. And so from that perspective, this digital transformation has given us some real problems. And they're very real problems in the world today. So it's given us disruption. Yeah, so it's a very fashionable word, disruption. Everyone wants to disrupt. And if I'm truthful, I can go into a room and say, yeah, we're a blockchain company, we're disrupting the world. Yeah, revolutionary, great. But it's meaningless. A gap between the creator and the consumer. So in old days, if you made cars, you sold cars. If you raised chickens, you sold chickens. If you chipped flint, you gave your axe head to the next person, and they'll give you, I don't know, a mammoth tusk back. So that's not the case anymore. There's a massive gap now between creators and consumers. So, for instance, if we took the music analogy that Kingsley referred to earlier. So, if I am Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones, and I'm sitting in my mansion, stoned out my tiny mind, and I get royalties, but I have to go through a record company, I have to go through a platform. So that in the old days, that was cut to a disc. So the man who made the disc would get some money out of it. The shop that sold it, I used to work in record shops, the shop that sold it would take a markup on it. And so Mr. Richards, who's done very well out of it, would get a fraction of that. Now add the digital world into it, and you add likes of Spotify and all these streaming companies and iTunes and all of that. Everyone's taking their cut. And you're seeing a growing gap now, and that gap is filled by secondary grey markets. So I don't know, a grey market is not quite as bad as a black market, but it's a confused market. So we mentioned the horse meat scandal, which is something that I often talk about when I try to explain the benefits of blockchain into real world scenarios. That came about because the meat was bought from a meat brokerage. So a central point where in Poland, I think it was, where they bought a load of meat in, and they buy a load of horse in, but because the meat brokerage had a reputation for selling beef, and they labelled it up as beef, suddenly it's beef. So complex supply chains. So in order for someone to manufacture something nowadays, these things have to come from all over the world. And with that becomes this unregulated system where you don't know whether something's sustainably produced the other side of the globe. You don't know whether your actors in your supply chain are working for the good of the supply chain or working for the good of themselves. They don't care, as long as they get rewarded for it, that's fine. You've got a lack of trust because of that, and a lack of sustainability as well. So you've got a massive, well, we're all worried about the state of the planet, we're worried about people, mining Bitcoin, and we're all looking for proof that there is renewable energy used within all of this, because we all want to live on a planet that's still here for our kids. And one is about security and privacy, personal data, and we talked about GDPR as well, and I'll touch on that again in a little bit as well. But blockchain, or the technologies surrounding blockchain and distributed ledgers, are perfectly positioned to be able to tackle most of these issues that this distributed digital revolution has thrown up. Big doom and gloom at the moment, I apologise for that. Now the other important factor in this whole play is where generations are going, and from my perspective this is a particularly important part of the landing of this new technology into current businesses, because there's no real need for any current business to adopt a new technology if they're making lots of money now. But the market is changing, and it's going to change, and there's a silent revolution coming. So millennials, a much maligned generation, all these individual so-called snowflakes are, when they coalesce, going to become a great big fucking avalanche. And businesses need to be prepared for that, because they will demand things from businesses that Generation X is my generation, or baby boomers, haven't previously demanded from these businesses, because they've not had to. Because, go back to the previous slide, we've not had those issues. So currently, it's a few little facts. So in the USA today, there are 66 million baby boomers. There are 77 million millennials. Now, those baby boomers are all getting on, and they're going to be less. That market is going to reduce, and we're going to reduce, and we're going to reduce. Those 77 million millennials are going to be around for a while. I'm a marketing man. I know the value of those kind of markets. And yes, they don't quite have the money in their pocket that baby boomers have, but they're going to be around a lot longer, so that market exists a lot longer. And actually, as they move up the ladder, the career ladder, their spending power is going to increase further and further. And they're not, a lot of them aren't investing it in property like Generation X's and baby boomers did. They're using it they buy experiences, they buy everyday experiences, holidays, goods, services. So any business that ignores this market does so at their peril, because this is the market that's going to dictate how businesses behave over the next 20 years. And it's often ignored, it's not considered. But my experience is that the businesses that we are talking to as Omnitude see this very sharply, and they understand it. They're not stupid. So these are the fundamental underpinnings of why I believe this technology is going to transform the world going forward. Whether we know it's this technology or not, it doesn't matter. but it's going to happen anyway. So just a quick one here. Here's Deloitte's Global Blockchain Survey. Because the Global Blockchain Survey is obviously going to be, you're going to get some impressive figures because people who answered this survey know about blockchain. So these are big businesses. So 95% of these businesses surveyed say the company plans to invest in blockchain tech this year. And this was done this year, this survey. That's really high. That's really high.
So who did the survey?
Deloitte.
But who did the survey?
Who did the survey?
Yeah, who did they survey?
Who did they survey? Oh, this is big enterprise. So it's Deloitte, so they'll go to the 100 biggest multinational enterprises in the world,
okay,
and they'll do it. Probably did it to all the people they're consulting with, actually. Right. And being Deloitte, you know that they're big businesses and they're paying a lot of money.
Yeah. And Deloitte have got the blockchain implementation as well.
Yes.
So
yes. Well, that's the other interesting thing. That's the other key indicator. If Deloitte are in this game, JP Morgan are in this game, IBM, Oracle, SAP, Cisco, they're all in this game. They've all got blockchain plays. Now the reason that IBM have a blockchain play, or Oracle have a blockchain play, or SAP, or whoever has a blockchain play, it's not because they want to make the world a better place. It's not because they wholeheartedly believe that Bitcoin is the anarcho rebellion against the banks. You can bet your bottom dollar that's not what they're thinking. They have got giant databases to sell to existing customers over the next 10 years. They've spent their lifetimes producing these ERP systems, warehouse management systems, customer relationship management systems. They've still got to sell that in the world of blockchain. What they're doing is they're not. Some of these aren't actually building their own blockchains. What they're doing is they're opening up the ability for these databases to communicate with blockchains. That's their big play. And so that's the world that the likes of Omnitude and these other businesses are moving into. And there's some big players in there, and it can get a bit scary at times. But we'll come on to why we believe that we have the edge on those businesses a little bit later. So 84% believe blockchain technology is broadly scalable and will eventually achieve mainstream adoption, probably through these big businesses. 85% expect blockchain to provide more security than conventional IT systems. So, yada yada. Now, this is one of our products that I wanted to talk about when we talk about security, is the Omnitude ID. Now, this is part of a series of products and frameworks that we are building, and this particular part of our offering is based around concerns that people have over their data privacy, and we all have them, and over what businesses are doing to protect you with centralised databases, which they cannot and will not be able to do. So Facebook, for instance, so here we go, a particular pet hate of mine, so you'll excuse me, but this wash paper here is the terms and conditions you have to sign for Facebook. I just print them out. You never see them printed out, but that's, so a single-sided, granted, but it gives dramatic effect. But and if you read that, it makes for chilling reading, because by using their platform, they are able to use every single part of your behavioural data, every minutiae, but not only yours, but all of your friends as well, and your friends' friends, and all of that. So everything that you post up there is not your property anymore, it's property of Facebook. All those pictures of your children that you put on Facebook don't belong to you anymore, they belong to Facebook. And if Facebook wants to use them for advertising, they can, and there's nothing you can do about it. So the Omnitude ID is an ability to be able to give a blockchain solution to a very real problem around what happens to your personal data. Now, this doesn't work in in isolation. It works with a whole other series. And there's a lot of text on here. I'm not going to read it, but I'll just sum it up for you. It's based around something called self-sovereign identity, which means we have a system where you can log into our platform that is protected by the blockchain, or our blockchain, and you can choose at any point what data you share with any vendor online or any organisation online. And you can do it on a granular basis. So you can choose to share more data or less data with individual vendors if you so wish. Or you can do a blanket share or a blanket non-share. What's so special about that? Well, if we roll back to what blockchain does really well, is it allows you to move value through a network. And we've built our blockchain to allow us to move microtransactions through. So it might mean that Facebook might want to use your data. Facebook won't ever use this, but some business might want to use your data. And you might actually like that business and might want them to use your data and give them access to your data. And you'll get paid for it through a micro crypto transaction. So the reward there is for the consumer is they can earn some kind of value out of sharing their data, which you do not get at this moment in time. What happens now is Facebook silos your data, sells that on to other businesses. They pimp out your data. It's your data, it's not Facebook's data, but they pimp it out, and that's how they make their money, and they make a hell of a lot of money out of that. Imagine if you reversed that and said, well, actually you can earn money out of you choosing to share your data. It puts you back into control. We talked about GDPR. There are some issues about the right to be forgotten. We're working on systems where we can actually enable that. However, GDPR is legislation for current technology and not for future technology. And if you start to disseminate what that means in terms of the blockchain, is you can still have a level of anonymity. So they might have access, people in the blockchain might have access to your data, but they will not be able to attribute to you. So that data then, from a personal point of view, becomes meaningless. So it's already tackling GDPR. There'll be new legislation for blockchain, there has to be. GDPR is solving a problem that's been around for about 10 years, as all government and institutional legislation does. It's way behind the curve. But we believe our blockchain and our systems are more, they do more than GDPR asks for at this current time. So that's just a visual of how it works and how you sign on and how you choose to share your self-sovereign identity on the blockchain. Now this is great, it's a great little product, it's fantastic, but it really comes its own when you start to combine it with other systems. So it's not just about e-commerce, it's not just about personal data, but once you've established a self-sovereign identity, what is true for people is also true for organisations, and it's also true for things and devices as well. If everything has an identity that can be verified on the blockchain, and that identity can be truthfully proven, then you start to build up an ecosystem of identifiable points within your network. Then you can start to apply it to supply chains, you can start to apply that to transactions, you can start to apply that to other more abstracted notions for businesses. So, what's the benefit for any business to adopt this Omnitude ID? So if they're paying customers for data that they'll get for free anyway, why would you do it? Well, I've worked in marketing for the whole of my life, and I know for a fact that the data that you get sold on, I've bought great data lakes of data to segment customer base and to sell to whatever, you can sell to anyone, I want it segmented like this, show me what their buying habits are, where can I advertise to engage these people, and you get this generalised mass of data back that says, do you know what, they read the Daily Mail and they'll pass by these 8 billboards is the highest traffic, and they might do this and they might do that on social media. And that's all right. That's all right. But you're still scattergun. It's still a scattergun approach. It's just slightly more focused. If a business is paying a customer for a data, that data they get back is more appropriate to that business. They can ask more appropriate questions. They can get more granular data back. They can start to make very important business decisions. So you buy, and I always say this, I'm going to do it again. I did it in Austin. I started this in Austin, and it seemed to work quite well. So I'll continue it. So you've got James, who buys 3 Stetsons from Kavanagh's, which is a Stetson seller in Austin. I've done my research. It's fine. They sell Stetsons in Austin. He buys 3 of them from Kavanagh's a year. Kavanagh's great. They sell 3 Stetsons. James really likes Kavanagh's. And actually what he does is go down the road after he's bought his 3 Stetsons every year and buy 7 bowler hats from the bloke round the corner. And he likes Kavanagh's so much, he's going to tell Kavanagh's that. Because he's going to get rewarded for it. So Kavanagh's asking, is there anything else you want to tell us? And James would go back and say, yeah, actually, I'll buy 7 bowler hats from this guy down the road. But I only buy 3 Stetsons from you, but you do make the best Stetsons in the world. That's great. Kavanagh's like, great, that's great. One James makes no difference. 100,000 James, they're coming back and all telling him that they're buying 7 bowler hats from the bloke around the corner. Suddenly the bloke who runs Kavanagh's is thinking, hang on, should I be selling bowler hats? So you start to get this relationship between the brand and the customer, which is much closer because it's paid, it has value. You get much more granularity in your data. You understand where your existing customers are and how to offer them more of what they like and less of what they don't want. And that's really valuable. So if you have that, if a business has that and a business doesn't have that, the business that has that has a commercial advantage. So that's how this has a benefit to other businesses. Now, Omnitude ID is a product, is part of a product suite that we have. And this product suite is all about these key things: authenticity, possession, and ownership, all of which are provable on the blockchain. We've gone back and found immutable records, and we've had this fantastic exploration of what it's good at. So this is the package that we've developed. So you have Omnitude Core, which is an abstracted blockchain architecture that allows us. So a lot of blockchain solutions will focus on the provenance of diamonds, or the provenance of bananas, or the provenance of this, or the provenance of that. We've created an abstract architecture, so it allows you to input any of the values that you want to put in it and work out the provenance of anything. Omnitude ID, this is the identity management that can be applied to people, organisations and things. And then you have these 3 certificates. The certificate of authenticity, so at the generation of a product, there is someone to check it, there's an actor within the point, there is an actor that you can trust, a trusted actor that says this is an authentic product, or it's sustainable, or it's this, or it's that, or it's whatever. But that's a certificate of authenticity. That is what the product will take with it on its journey. Whether that product's a physical thing or it's data, it's stamped with that. Then there's a certificate of possession. So there's the difference between the last 2 certificates, possession and ownership, is you can be in the possession of something if you are a supply chain actor without actually owning it. So if I've got something on a ship, the ship is in possession of the ship from A to B, but it's not owned by the ship. If that ship sinks, the person who owns it loses it, the ship's insured, but the ship has never owned it. And then a certificate of ownership. Now you can apply these at any point along the chain. So it might be in very simple supply chains, you have all of that is applied straight to the product sold. In more complex supply chains, you might have a certificate of authenticity and a certificate of possession, or you might have a certificate of possession and a certificate of ownership, or you might have all 3, or you might have just one of those. But as long as you've covered that, you've covered most supply chains, and most aspects of our digital world are supply chains. Everything, as Martin Braun, our supply chain expert, once said to me, John, isn't life a supply chain? And it's like, But everything's a supply chain. You generate something, you move something, something lands. Whether that's money, data, a product, anything. You go on holiday, you're in a supply chain. You get on the plane and all of that. So here's proof that how you can apply these abstracted principles into a wealth of different real world scenarios. So these are our existing partners and clients. We have the Maltese government who are working on their transport infrastructure system. If you can guarantee good actors in any network, you can guarantee that the blockchain is going to deliver good information. And the Maltese government recently privatised its transport system, and so it has a load of players within the transport system. That's ferries, taxis, buses, a couple of tourist railways as well. So they've got all these separate operators that tell them that the services are running great. Yet they have a population that are telling them that the services aren't running great. And so these people who are running these services are given all these big spreadsheets in saying, see, arrived on time, we've completed our contract, you pay us the money you owe us. And the Maltese government saying, well, do you know what, the Maltese people are telling us that the buses aren't arriving on time. In fact, some of the buses aren't even running the routes. And so they've looked at blockchain technology and said, actually there's a mutable record here. And if you do it by GPRS systems, you can write the location of those vehicles at that particular point to the blockchain, and it's all transparent and it's all immutable, and it can be proved. And so that's what we're working with the Maltese government. Because once you start to get that data coming in, it means you can then scale up your bus service at a certain point, or you can get the citizens onto an ID system where they can pay with their phones to enter the bus, or this, that and the other. They know when the bus is going to arrive. You know, there's lots of other technologies involved in this, but blockchain can underpin that version of the truth. Image and Pay are a payments provider, and they are looking to create payments via images. So you can pay via Apple Pay, you can pay via your phone. They're just it's almost a way of, you can customise your credit cards nowadays. But it's about giving a value to images. So if you are a brand, for instance, say you're Cristiano Ronaldo, you could, and the person on the other end of that transaction is a Cristiano Ronaldo fan. They want a rare picture of Cristiano Ronaldo. They can pay a premium to have that image on their phone, and they can store tokenized value behind that image, and it can work as a bank account for you, which is quite exciting when you think that there's a large part of this world that own mobile phones that don't have bank accounts. So it's quite disruptive in terms of financial payments. Also quite, it's quite a growth area. Absolute Taste, they're a caterer. So I told you these were a broad range of clients. But if you take the food industry, we've already talked about what can happen in the food industry. But on the positive side of that, Absolute Taste are a high-end caterer. They cater for I can't remember the cater for now. So British Grand Prix, Formula E, Volvo around the world yacht race, Queen's. I know they do the proms and lots of other big events. But for them, it's all about the theatrical experience of the food. And so we're working with them to be able to almost biotag the salmon in the stream where it's caught up in Scotland, or the carrot in the field in Barnsley or whatever. And they can deliver that story to their very discerning customer base. They cater for private jets and this, that and the other as well. It's not particularly useful from a mass market point of view, unless you want to prove that your milk's okay, or your eggs are free range, or your beef is actually British. But for them it's all about the theatre of it and the provenance and stuff like that. CS Cart are an e-commerce retailer. They are our first launchpad for the Omnitude ID, which allow you to sign into the Omnitude ID once. You can sign into any CS card site around the world. They're in 172 countries, 35,000 sites. So you'll be able to move from one of those sites to the other without having to re-sign in, without to re-enter any of your details. You can put all your details, your dress size, your waist size, your shoe size, or any preference into your Omnitude ID. When you go to that site, if you so wish, it will only serve you up products in your own size or in your own preference, if you wish it to happen. And you'll never have to sign into another website again as long as it's on this platform. Mind you, that is only 35,000 sites, but it sounds like an awful lot, but that's a drop in the ocean. But it's, once we go through CSCAR, we might look at Magento and all of those businesses to be able to adopt that. It also means that all your data that you input, you'll never have to put a delivery address in again. And actually, sometimes the retailer won't need to know your delivery address, only the courier needs to know it. The retailer doesn't need to know your delivery address. Not really. As long as the courier knows it, that's fine. And then William, this is the glam one. This is glam on Williams F1. Well, we are working with Williams to ensure that we're using blockchain as version control for their data. They have so many data inputs, 20, 30 data inputs on a Formula One car that are pumping terabytes of data. I've been there on race day, the Williams HQ, seeing all the performance of the cars and what's happening, how slow they're going, or whatever. But what I didn't realise about Formula One is they have limited amount of time in wind tunnels and a limited amount of time in their simulators. All teams have got a capped amount of time that they can spend developing their cars. On each individual racetrack as well as anything else. So they have these simulators that they go around and they scan the tarmac on the right. I never knew this, but the bloke goes around with a kind of ground radar, whatever they're called, and they scan the surface and they put it into the simulator. Every bump in the tarmac is then replicated in the simulator car, and it's projected around them in 180 degrees. And they put the drivers in there, and those drivers know that course inside out. They're in there for 2 weeks before the race. They know every corner, but their time in those simulators is limited, as is the wind tunnel. So they're forever tweaking their cars and forever changing little bits about them. Those changes are mutually written to the blockchain. So if something goes wrong, and it does, and the car spins off, or whatever on the simulator, and they're like, well, that change didn't work, they can track it entirely back to the exact thing that they changed. Now, most people would say, well, haven't they already got that technology to do that? Well, they kind of have. They haven't got technology to track whether Microsoft have updated their operating system on their simulator, because they've had points where their car has gone a second quicker around the track and they've changed nothing on the car. And they've tracked it back and they thought, why has this happened? And the only thing they can think, Microsoft have updated their operating system, so our simulator is running quicker than it was. So they've got to keep track of every single minutiae of change within their simulation environment and their wind tunnel.
Why did actually Microsoft update their operating system?
Because they use an operating system that they need, because it's not their system.
I mean, I work in process control. The one thing you don't do if I'm compiling a product is let Microsoft up the operating system while I'm building a product.
But what they do is they might gate it, but then their IT department will work out when the right time to post that in is. So they might gate it, but they won't communicate with the simulator crew. So the simulator's saying, I'm working on 10.8. If that comes down into blockchain, if that's immutably written to the blockchain, they can check it and say, because of the transparency, they can say, what has changed in the last day after we turned the lights out in the simulator and came in this morning, the IT department been hard at work, got their update down, everything's lovely. And suddenly they know, they can check it, it's immutably written to the blockchain. Everything that comes in, every input and output is written to the blockchain. So it goes back to this point, it doesn't always have to be currency, it's about value, and sometimes businesses' data is the valuable part of that business. So we're hoping we're going to make their cars go quicker around the track because they'll be able to spend more time in the simulator and more time in the wind tunnel because they spend less time backpedaling. We'll see. And in Hyperledger, we talked about Hyperledger. We are a member of the Hyperledger Foundation and the Linux Foundation as well. Our system is built on Hyperledger because it's a best-in-class system. We use a permissioned network, not a public network. Transaction times are still a hurdle to overcome. Hyperledger boasts the ability or the potential for it to run 100,000 transactions per second through its systems. It doesn't, it won't ever reach that because you have things like latencies and all these real world problems that you have to deal with. But out of the box, we run it at 3,500 transactions per second on a live network, which is good enough for us because that's good enough for Visa and PayPal to run their businesses on. And it's better than 10 minutes and an hour that Bitcoin uses. However, Bitcoin is a public blockchain, and that's why it takes a long time. That's why we're running a permission blockchain, because we're not about running blockchains just for the principle of running a blockchain. We think it has a use for businesses and consumers alike. Because we're running a permission blockchain, we're using a different sort of consensus. We run a hybrid blockchain. We don't use proof of stake or proof of work. You can choose your consensus with us. Different businesses can run our chains on different consensus. But we're using Stellar as the underpinning, which is a token, is a cryptocurrency token. And the reason we're using Stellar is because it costs absolutely nothing to go through that process, and it happens lightning fast. So that means that we can make microtransactions to people within the system. We can pay them very small amounts of money, which you can't do with a bank. You can't transfer, 20p from one person to another without a bank charge. It doesn't happen. So the one thing that blockchain can do, or these new blockchains can do, is they can microtransact very quickly because the cost of the transaction is so low. So you can move things like 2 cents from one user to another very quickly with very, very little cost involved in that. And you can't do that with banks. You can't do that with anything unless you give someone 2 cents in their palm. And even then there's a cost because you've got to be in front of them. So those sort of advantages start to transform what you can do with this technology. And when you start to think about that, how you can microtransact anything in this world, you could start to move money around this world very, very quickly. They're tiny amounts, but if you do it over a huge volume, that is a massive transaction of financial wealth. And if you can do that to third world countries, and all these people don't have bank accounts, these farmers that are they're not sustainable because it doesn't pay them to be sustainable. It's great for us to think, sit in the Western civilization, wring our hands about the rainforest in Sumatra, or some poor orangutan that suddenly appeared on an Iceland ad. We can wring our hands about this, and we can worry about it, but we do not understand why this is happening. It's happening because these are subsistence farmers that are being paid no more for being sustainable as they are for just burning the forest down. They're living day to day, crop to crop. The last thing they're going to worry about is sustainability. They can't borrow any money from banks because banks won't touch them. They can't go anywhere to improve their life. They are just stuck in this rut. Now, if you start to give them crypto transactions and you start to pay them directly without them having to go to the market, and eventually be able to lend them money via crypto so that they can then become sustainable or increase their acreage or whatever, or buy the right tools or this, that, and that. You start to transform these communities in fundamental ways and start to maybe help these developing economies accelerate into a much more positive status. I'll get off my soapbox now. I'm a bit heated about that one. And that's us really. So this is just a little bit of marketing spiel at the end because you have been talking to the brand guy. So world first in producing the only middleware platform based on Hyperledger Fabric. As far as I know, we're one of the only people in the world to be doing middleware blockchain in the first place. And we're doing middleware blockchain because it's easy to integrate with existing systems. We're pioneers in implementing Stellar-based transactional platform. Within this middleware, obviously Stellar did it first because it's their token, but we've got IBM asking us how we do it, and IBM have been trying to do this for the last year, and it took us, I think, 4 weeks. But that's the difference between being a small, agile, pure play business and being a tech giant that you can't move so quickly. And that's us really. So I hope that was interesting, and I hope that sort of segued nicely from the principles and then how it can be applied. But for me, if we go back to that original point, it's about the trusted movement of value. And when you start to think about it in that respect, it can mean anything. So thank you anyway.
How do you associate your certificate of authenticity with a carrot from Barnes?
Right, so it goes back to what we've said about blockchain is a technology and it allows you to do that. So I could tag that carrot. So I could tag it with a chip or with a consignment number or a QR code or a barcode. I could tag it. I have to trust at the point of tagging there is a trusted actor who's willing to do the right thing at the right time. Blockchain is a technology. The supply chain is more than just a technology. But if we allow that tracking, then if there is a bad actor within the supply chain, so if you put a QR code on it, you can track it all the way. You can track it because you're at certain points you will have hubs where it will go into a distribution center, it gets scanned in, moved through, scanned out again, checked, scanned in, checked, moved through, scanned out. If you've got the right actors in the right place in any supply chain, you can control anything. You have to have the right actors. If you've got the wrong actors, blockchain's also a very good way of identifying where your supply chain's falling down as well. So let's say you've got one of your actors is
there's still a lot of trust, human trust involved.
Well, we live in a human world, so there is, but you can put things in place. The technology is only good as the people that use it, and it's only as the technology is not going to change the world. It's the people that use it that will change the world. So yes, it's not going to it's not going to divorce you from human error. No, it's not going to solve any of that. What it will do though is allow you to identify if there are hiccups in your supply chain, where they've happened, and it does compel people to behave in a much more positive manner, because if they know you can track misbehaviour, if they know they can track that actually that meat is suddenly horse meat at that point, so the beef has disappeared out of the chain and been sold at a premium and been replaced by horse meat, you will know at what point that has happened because it will be on the blockchain. So it does compel people to kind of to behave, but it doesn't solve anything. You've got to look. I mean, a lot of our work is about at what point do you put blockchain in.
It will be a lot quicker at destroying reputations.
Yes, because you can check, and big business, these big global corporations that we're having conversations with do not want a bad supply chain. They've got options at all points in that supply chain. So if it's going through a factory, and that's where the problem is, these big corporations, they'll just move, and that factory will they're contractually obliged. It's a breach of contract. So it's interesting, but it is not about the technology. Is not going to change the world. I don't believe that for one moment. You have to go through, and we find a lot of our time is spent looking at the logistical and the reward systems to put in to ensure that people are compelled to behave in the most positive manner they possibly can. And that's down to reward. If people get paid to do something right, they'll do it right, most times.
It's a big thank you to Jon and Kingsley for tonight. It's been great.